Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Mike with the Guns and Mental Health Podcast by WTTA. I'm joined today by Jay Hood, my co-host. What's up, Jay?
What's howdy? How you doing, Mike?
It's good to see you. We don't get to see you come through that often, so it's good to see your face.
Absolutely happy to be here.
And Kevin Barry, trusted producer. My brains, everything that works with this whole organization is because of Kevin. What's going on, Kevin? How are you?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for today's show, and I'll tell you why. We get really heavy on the show sometimes. It's a topic, when it comes to guns, mental health, suicide prevention. Sometimes these shows are heavy. We have a guest on today that, oh man, you and Nate Ryan like to have fun with it. Right? You go like it's just I watch your YouTube videos. I'm a fan of the channel and the bits you do, before you actually came on, Kevin and I were talking about the bit about legal, illegal.
Yeah, felony, not felony.
But I'm excited to have Ryan Matheson from the King of Camo. How's it going, brother? How are you?
It's going great, man. I can't tell you guys how much of a pleasure it is that you guys invited me on. Thank you, Jay, for reaching out, brother man, and connecting with me, because I went through and I was able to look through your guys' information and stuff, and I love what you guys do. So it's a real pleasure to be on with y'all. So
No, I appreciate that. I feel I feel like there's so many good people in the firearms industry, right? And when you talk about the industry, you talk about the culture, the community, the gun shops, the trainers, distributors, all the way up to the manufacturers. We like to shine a light on just like all aspects. But why don't you tell us a bit about the shop, what you guys do, all your video creation, just kind of your general attitude about the Second Amendment.
yeah, man. Nate opened the shop back in 2019, November of 2019, which was a wonderful time because it was right before COVID happened. So Nate had to deal with that whole mess and was able to get through it. And in 21, he actually brought me on to the shop. And whenever he did, me and Nate really had a good talk about what we wanted to do here, because Nate and me have seen in the industry before a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, especially when it comes to running a gun store, having a storefront, but also how you appear to people in your community, especially in the 2A community. And what we saw on the bad side of things was, like, I've experienced it. I mean, I have prior military service background, but Nate doesn't. But, even still going to other stores, and I'm not going to name anybody, but you'll go to gun stores and you will not get the best experience from people. You won't get the information you need, or you'll be talked down to or belittled, or you're told that you don't need to have that certain thing, you need to get something else, or it's a bad experience. And then that leads to people being turned off from being in the 2A community or diving into that. And we didn't want that. And then on top of it too, me and Nate, we try to be as genuine as we can. So, like, whatever people see with us on the YouTube channel is just how we are in real life, because you don't want to give off this fake persona to people, because if people come into our shop, they shouldn't be getting any kind of different experience. They should be getting a genuine experience every single time they come in. And I see that a lot in the YouTube space. So when me and Nate really talked about it, we're like, we want to build a place in the King of Camo where people can come in here, have a great experience, whether you have no knowledge at all or you have tons of knowledge. It doesn't matter. We're going to help you out regardless of it. And we're going to treat you just like a regular human being, and not, talk down to you in any kind of way. And from there, it stemmed to, okay, well, we want to try and reach out to people in our local community. YouTube was the best way to do that. It was kind of our biggest voice and platform that we could do. And so when we started to do that, we were like, okay, we try to have fun at the shop. We try to make it enjoyable. We try to enjoy what we do at work. And we have experiences with people that come through the door, which breeds the content for us. They give us the content. We just take it and we'll put our fun twist on it and everything. And for the most part, most of the interactions that we have in those shorts that are like a negative type reaction has happened. We just exaggerate it and turn it funny, but at the base of that short, that's something that's actually happened. So it's done well for us because it's been able to resonate with people. People will see it, people laugh because of it. And I think we've seen a lot of people that say, man, I love your guys' shorts, it helps get me through the day. And that's another big thing that really weighs on me, because I'm like, it means that I'm doing something right. Me and Nate are doing something right. We're helping people out. People are having fun, they're laughing about it. But it's a way for people that may have been a little hesitant about the 2A community. They see our shorts, they see that it's not all serious. It doesn't have to be super serious all the time. It can be fun. So that's what we kind of brought to it.
Yeah, that's good. We always need that inviting presence. You know, when I first started in this industry, I was basically a sales rep, and I used to go into all kinds of different shops. I used to call it like the white man's barber shop, just because like you'd walk in a store and there's just like a bunch of white dudes just sitting around, like just talking about guns, and the guy behind the shop's taking calls from distributors trying to actually sell stuff, but people were just going in there. Now it's everybody's barber shop, you know, quite frankly, with just the uptick and just the different groups of people that are in there, you know, whether it be the female side, the Black community. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see this grow, that people understand that the Second Amendment is actually for everyone and that you can go in there. But I definitely agree with you if you make it fun, because, you know, when you go in and buy a gun, the last thing you want, especially if you don't know what you're doing, is like Joe Commando telling you you need to do this or you need to do that. Or, you know, quite frankly, like you know, everyone usually, for the most part, thinks that people in the firearms industry are very right wing, you know, and they're gonna put those politics in there. So if you're trying to invite people that may be on the other side that wants to get into the 2A, which is, that's what we need, right? We need more people from all walks of life coming in and saying, this isn't shouldn't be a political issue. This is for everybody. Being inviting to them and breaking the stereotype of like I said, tactical Joe behind there, just saying like, yeah, you need this for stopping power. It's just kind of like try to relate to the customer. But I definitely think your videos do that. What is your background? How did you get into the Second Amendment community?
Well, I mean, I kind of grew up in it, but Nate was the one that helped me kind of flourish it. And I'll show you guys that Nate's here now.
Hey, what's
Hey.
happening, Nate?
What's going on? Hey, I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of a paint job right now, and it's super critical. I finish it. The customer is actually going to a competition in Italy, and so I'm doing this American flag themed paint job on a chassis right now. But yeah, really nice to meet you guys. I'm Nate. Um, I am an immigrant to this country. My dad's from India. My mother's French. Grew up in Canada. Don't hold that against me.
I hold it against him.
I grew up in New Jersey. We're good. We're good. I grew up in Jersey.
Well, I moved to the States when I was 14 years old. And I remember in middle school, I was making friends, and this like one redneck kid was like, "You want to come to my house and shoot 22s out back?" And I was like, "Is that allowed? Are we allowed to shoot guns?" And so I went to his house and we shot twos out back for hours, and that began my addiction to firearms. And anyway, my career was in aviation. I was an aircraft inspector for Bombardier Aerospace, and I'd be gone for 3 to 4 months at a time. But every time I came home, I'd have a fat pocket of cash that I'd just go blow on guns while I was home for like 4 to 6 weeks. So, this might sound cliche, but I wanted to customize my guns. I didn't want mine to look like everybody else's. And I remember in Call of Duty, the first Modern Warfare, you could totally customize your guns with all these different camo patterns and such. And so that kind of began my obsession there of customizing. And I'm kind of self-taught. Realized that I could create stencils and use an airbrush. And then at first it was just rattle cans, but then I started using actual firearms coatings. So it was a hobby for many, many years. And one day, my wife and I, we started having kids. And one day I was in Germany, and my wife called me and she said, my second son took his first steps and I missed it. And I was always gone for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And it totally crushed me. I called my boss at Bombardier and I said, "Hey, I quit. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I already booked my ticket. There's no convincing me." And so I quit my career in aviation. And I came home and sat around the house for a few months. And finally, my wife got tired of me sitting around watching Netflix and playing video games. She's like, "Are you going to do anything?" And I kind of had this idea that I would start a gun customization shop. It was something that wasn't available in our area. If you wanted to have your gun painted professionally, you'd have to send it to like Texas or Nevada or something like that. And, here locally in North Georgia, there was nobody doing that. And I'd been doing it in the background. And, my brother one day, he asked me to do a duck camo paint job on one of his duck shotguns. And so, painstakingly, because we didn't have vinyl stencils at the time, I was using painter's tape. And what I would do is print out a page of duck camo from the internet and then trace it with an X-Acto and lay it over painter's tape and then cut the painter's tape in the same shape. And so it was like a painstaking process. But when I handed my brother the gun, he was like, holy shit, you're like the king of camo. And when he said that, I was like,
That's a cool name.
That's it.
That, talks to my ego. So I started an Instagram and Facebook account, and I decided, okay, I'm going to really do this. So I built this professional paint booth in my garage, and I went to all the local gun stores and told them what I was doing. And so they started sending me customers, and the business started in my garage. It ran there for 2 years. Finally, my wife got fed up with strangers showing up to the house with guns, and she kicked me out. Yep. And I moved into this strip mall location where we are now on Keithbridge Road. It was that was all she wrote. It has just grown and grown and grown. Never in a million years did I think we would have a YouTube channel with 137,000 subscribers as we sit right now. Never in a million years did I think we would carry suppressors and have a laser engraver and do all kinds of custom stuff like that. It just started with painting, but it evolved from there to stippling modifications, basically anything you can imagine doing to your gun. And so I ran the shop for 2 years by myself. And then one day I was on my way home from work. I was actually leaving early to go get the kids. It was the first day of school, and my kids had asked me to drop them off that morning. And I had this laser engraving I had to get done for a customer. So it just wasn't possible for me to drop them off, but I promised them that I would come pick them up at the end of the day. And so I was leaving the shop here around noon that day. And on my way home on my motorcycle, I got hit by this lady turning left in front of me. Anyway, totaled my motorcycle, broke 13 bones, had a concussion, dislocated my left shoulder. I was in bad shape. Almost lost my life, really. I was ejected about 85 feet from my motorcycle and landed on the side of my head and my shoulder. And so needless to say, I didn't make it to pick up the kids, but when I came back to work a few days after getting out of the hospital, I realized I wasn't going to be able to hold a part up to paint it. And I realized I was going to need help. I couldn't run the shop by myself anymore. And if I wanted it to survive, it needed to stay open. So I put out an ad on Indeed for a store manager and a shop assistant. And the day I clicked enter to go live on Indeed, literally not even 5 minutes later, this guy walks in.
I didn't see the ad.
And just luck. Yeah. And fate is fate.
That's it. And so we chatted for about an hour, and I was like, shoot, I think I just found my new store manager, And I'll let Ryan tell the rest of his part, but that's kind of how I got into it. It was a passion. I love customizing stuff, not just guns, but all kinds of stuff. I've painted motorcycles, rims, boat parts, helmets, baseball bats, you name it. You name it.
If it fits in the door, we can probably do it.
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started in all this. And obviously I have a great love for the 2A community. I'm so pro 2A, just like everybody else here in the room. We want to see a lot of our gun rights restored back to what they should be. They're all totally restricted right now, and it's really kind of ridiculous, some of the rules. We have that one short that recently blew up.
Yeah, Michael was talking about it first.
30 million.
Yeah, I brought it up. I was cracking up.
It's got 30 million views on it, but for a reason. Because people see the idiocy in the rules. A vertical foregrip on a pistol, not allowed. So what you're saying is that something that would make me more accurate and safer should not be allowed on a pistol, right? So my shot should go wild when I'm using a pistol. It doesn't make sense. And just like many of the other rules, So, the whole brace ruling, another joke. The bump stock ruling, back and forth, another joke.
It's given us a lot of content for shorts.
100%. And we like to not only mock people with poor firearm safety, but also the ATF and the rules that they make. So yeah, that's kind of my story. Quick and dirty.
Ryan, where how did you get it? How did you walk in through the door? What was your story up until then?
So I I actually wasn't from this area. Whenever I graduated high school, I was over in Calhoun, Georgia, and I actually got a scholarship. Went to the to go up here to the college right up here in Dahlonega, and it was a military scholarship. So I joined the National Guard. I'm a guardsman, and got it set up and completed my contract. But that brought me over this way, and being in the National Guard, you still have to have like another full time job. You just do the guard stuff, once a month, at a month in the summer and stuff like that, and do training and everything. So I needed to work, and I worked a few different jobs. And the job that I had before this, I'd done some private security stuff, I'd done some home remodeling stuff, and the one that I had right before this, it was a project managing company that was right here in town. And I was just for just everyone's general knowledge. I'm 29. I was I was like 25 when I started. When I came on here, I worked at here. It's amazing how much you see grown men not know how to handle. Hey, I need paint. Well, go to the paint store and get the paint. Well, I don't know what paint to get. It's on the contract. Read the contract. I don't know where it is. I don't know where it's at on the contract. Okay, well, I got tired of dealing with grown men that couldn't read and do projects correctly. It was really annoying. And I'm like, I've got to get into something that I'm passionate about. I was getting to the point where I'm like, I've got to do something where I feel like I can build something, I can grow somewhere, and I can do something. And I'm like, you know what? I have this yearning for firearms. I want to get into the community. That's where that's where my knowledge is based out of. Where can I go? I looked on my phone. I called one other place here in town. They were just like an at-home FFL. No one, was hiring for them or whatever. Nate was the second place that I saw, and I'm like, that sounds really cool. And I got off work at my project managing company, came over here, and I pulled on the door. It was open. I was like, hey, y'all hiring for anybody? And Nate's like, I just sent an ad out on Indeed. Did you see that? I'm like, no, I just saw the door was open. So that's literally how I intersected with it. And then from there, it's again like all she wrote. I ended up coming on with Nate, and we built it out the shop. We built out the shop way more than what it was at that point in time. We started getting out to the local community, doing events, and we started going more hard in with the YouTube channel.
Did you guys anticipate the amount? Because it's kind of funny. You obviously have a shop, and you're regulated. I mean, everybody, when you own a business in the gun industry, that's the one thing that people don't realize is how much regulation there actually is, right? But like, you guys you're popular on YouTube too, which is regulated for gun. Like everything we do has regulation, and we get, crushed all the time, buried in algorithms and things like that. Did you guys anticipate or know? Because both of you kind of not like I'm a product of nepotism. I came up through the firearms industry, so I was always told about the regulation and how tough things were. Did you guys anticipate that or understand that, or when you first got in, were you guys like, what the Jesus? Like, there's more regulation in this than any.
That's kind of where I was at. I was like, good Lord, we can't do anything.
I had a good friend who told me he was in the military. He was in the Army. He did a tour in Iraq, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Bad mofo, right? He ended up going back as a bomb dog handler, as a contractor. And then when he retired from all that, he started a firearms instruction business where he just offered beginner pistol, beginner shotgun, beginner carbine, and then advanced classes and all of that. And, one day we were hanging out, and he said, if you have an FF and you get your SOT, you can do stuff in full auto, you can do short barrel rifles. There's a lot less restriction on you. And I was like, really? And so that had always been in the back of my mind. And so I knew that when I started the gun store, I'd have all these extra abilities over the average citizen to be able to do the stuff that I wanted to do. So I luckily had somebody to kind of advise me a little bit. But, the truth is I kind of dove in without a whole lot of knowledge. I'll never forget, actually, believe it or not, our ATF agents are pretty dope. They're cool.
They're fans
of our channel. They watch our channel. They come in here and they actually want us to succeed. They want to help us, and they want to make sure that we stay out of trouble. Believe it or not, a lot of the ATF agents that we hear about are pencil pushers and people who just sit behind a desk making rules. But
don't ever go out.
A lot of the ones on the ground who are working day to day with us are very down to earth, at least here in Georgia. I know in other states it's different, but here in Georgia, we're one of the free states. And so, we've got some cooler ATF agents. And I'll never forget the first day. I had a female ATF agent. She came in here and she sat me down and we went through this checklist that took about 4 hours. And I began to realize the enormity of responsibilities that I have now as an FFL holder. It may be easy to do certain things, but I got to stay within all these guidelines, And so there was definitely a learning curve to that, and learning how to stay out of trouble. But for the most part, we weren't really doing anything that would get us in trouble. We were painting guns, laser engraving guns, making custom holsters. So we weren't really dabbling in anything like we are now, where we're 3D printing stuff and doing all kinds of fun stuff like that. So I would say there was a slight learning curve, but the other really good thing that we did was I sent Ryan to a seminar. To be honest, like I do all the painting, all the laser engraving, I pay all the bills, check the mail, take out the trash, right? Like there's so much stuff that I have to do.
Walk up to the garbage.
As a business owner, like I can't do everything. And so I kind of put Ryan in charge of running the front showroom and the books. And so I sent him to this seminar that was put on by, was it the ATF?
Yeah, it's put on by the ATF.
Yeah, it was put on by the ATF in Atlanta. And it's basically a learning seminar. And Ryan came back with like a whole new understanding of the rules and regs. And it like, I didn't have to worry about it anymore. And now I'm like, hey, Ryan, can't we do this? Like, can we SBS this? Can we do this? Can we do that? And he's like, yep. As long as I fill out this form and submit it, we're good. So like, I don't even worry about this stuff anymore. I just stay in the back like a grunt. And
they just asked me if we can do stuff without getting a felony charge. And I'm like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah. And so Ryan makes sure I stay out of jail.
Yep, checks and balances.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, Nate, I have a question for you. Obviously, you sustain an injury with the motorcycle accident. You're kind of, you're succeeding. Then you kind of realize, oh man, I'm vulnerable, right? Like, how did mental health play into that? Like, and then having someone like Ryan come in, where you guys, it sounds like you probably had an instant connection of like almost like you guys were friends before he walked in the door.
Yeah,
right. Like, how was your mental health?
Oh, well, to be honest with you, it was not good. It was not good. There was some depression, obviously, because I was pretty broken physically. And I couldn't do all the things that I wanted to do. And so it became frustrating. There was a state of depression there because I didn't realize I was going to have to spend the kind of money I was going to spend to hire additional employees. I wasn't ready for that, so I had to dip into savings to do that. And at the time I was planning on buying a house. And so we couldn't buy the house. And, the concussion also, it was a very severe concussion. And I had some brain damage from it. And so like memory loss, slurred speech, vertigo, I would wake up in the morning and sit up and it would feel like I had just drank a whole bottle of whiskey. Because my equilibrium was used to me being laying down. And then as soon as I woke up, I'm perpendicular to the previous position. And now all of a sudden, like the room is spinning. So, there was a lot of self-coping and self-medicating that I did back then, with alcohol and kind of, alcohol is a depressant. And though you think it helps numb things in the moment, it actually really makes things worse. And it just got progressively worse for about 2 years. And then I ended up, this is not something I like admitting, but I ended up getting 2 DUIs within 6 months of each other. And I attributed a lot of it to my concussion and then my drinking. And, brain injuries are real. I can tell you from firsthand experience, I would ask Ryan a question like, hey, did you send that guy an email, a follow-up email? And he'd be like, yeah. And 10 minutes later, I'd come over.
Same question.
Ask him the same question again. And Ryan was a godsend to me in that time. And it really took that second DUI for me to realize that I needed to stop drinking. And but even though I realized that I continued drinking, until I was finally issued a court date and, put on probation, and then realized, okay, like I'm court ordered to be sober. And so I'm actually 7.5 months sober now.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Congratulations.
Nice, man.
And quite honestly, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. My life is so much clearer, so much better. I have so much better motivation to get things done. And I have a better relationship with God. I rediscovered church and made new friends. It's funny how like you have these party buddies you hang out with, and the second you stop partying, they ain't your buddies no more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, that also made me realize the people that I was around really weren't really the best of influences. And, at the age of, 42, be realizing this so late in life, but having realized it, feeling like it's a blessing, has really turned things around for me. The YouTube channel blew up. Last year or at the end of 2023,
Yeah.
we had about 600 subscribers, and we'd been doing YouTube for almost 4 years at that point. And we started making these YouTube shorts, and the channel instantly exploded. The first short we made gained us 26,000 new subscribers. By the end of March, we were sitting at about 50,000 subscribers. By the end of the year, we were almost at 90,000 subscribers. And then this year we hit 100,000. And then a month later, we gained 36,000 new subscribers.
Wow.
And
Damn.
I definitely attribute all of this success to God and sobriety, because it has helped me stay on track. It has made me a better person, a more caring person, someone who is more patient. I realized some of the mistakes that I was making were causing me to not be successful. And this is actually the first year that the shop's been paying for itself and paying the employees, and not me having to come out of pocket to make ends meet. So it's been another blessing in that way, and my relationship with my children, my family, my wife, everybody is better. Even my friends, so many people have noticed the change in me in the last 7.5 months. And it really only took about, a month and a half of me not drinking to lose all those bad influences. They withered themselves out. I didn't even have to say goodbye. They kind of walked away on their own, and I'm okay with that. I'm on a better path now, and I'm very thankful to God for giving me that blessing of that second DUI.
Yeah. Substance abuse, obviously we deal with mental health every day. We live it. Substance abuse is a huge issue. And that's, even when people take medication, like I'm always asking them, like, you still drinking? Right. Like, because it's like, hey, if you're going to try medication to help you stay on the straight and narrow, like up here, and you're going out and you're still partying. Yeah, I mean, I know if I have a few drinks, I got 2 days of brain fog, right? Like those are things that, like, we always try to say, like, be very mindful of your alcohol consumption or your drug consumption or things like that, because it is one of the things, though, I think is interesting. Normally, Jake Wiskerson is here with us today. He couldn't be here with us. He's a licensed therapist and also a huge Pro 2A guy. He's our co-host. But he said to me one time, he's like, God delivers miracles sometimes in people that he sends into your life, right? And it's like, now you have all these new miracles in your life and everything is going perfect for you. And I want Ryan to always, like, when you're having a bad day, just put his hand on your shoulder and be like, I'm a miracle.
No, I'm very
I mean, it's funny that you say that, but he is, and he does do that sometimes. Not exactly in those words, but he's always been the one to, like, look at things from another perspective. I'm kind of hard-headed. I'm a Scorpio, right? So I'm kind of set in my own ways, but he has oftentimes been able to kind of look at things from a different perspective. I always look at things from a business owner's perspective, like, how much is this going to cost me, and am I going to see a return on this? And but he sometimes can look at it from a different perspective and say, well, look, you may not get a return on this, but look at the exposure we're going to get from this. Or, look at how many new subscribers or customers we may gain from this. Look, this may increase traffic to the shop. And, as much as I hate to admit it, Ryan's been right a lot of the times. And, where I was being hard headed and like, I want to do things my way because, this is my shop and I spent my entire life savings on this place. I constantly remind him of that. And he constantly reminds me that I remind him. And he's well aware. But, the one thing about Ryan is that he also acts like he owns this place, in the sense that he takes ownership and he is a true advocate for the place. He has passion for what we do here and he has bought in. You don't see that often. Recently, we had a little 21-year-old kid come in here who wanted to work here. And, he had dreams and aspirations of becoming a Navy SEAL.
That's what he said.
But he couldn't even get up, get to the shop on time. He still has his mother wake him up. In fact, his mother doesn't go to work when she's supposed to in the morning. She waits till it's time to wake him up so she can make sure he gets up to come to work, and then she goes to work. And I thought, well, God, this is a coddled kid right here, 21, and he wants to become a Navy SEAL. And I gave him chance after chance after chance, but I realized there's nothing I could do to save this one. There's nothing I could do to help this guy because, you may see some potential in him, but if he doesn't want to change and he doesn't want to get better, then, he's not going to do it. And I have seen that time and time again with employee after employee that's come through here that's younger in age. They just don't make them like they used to. And so that's why having Ryan, has always been a blessing. I have nothing negative to say about Ryan because he's always done everything that he's supposed to do and more. He took ownership of his position here and he acts like he is a part of the King of Camo. And so that's why, we're the two longest standing employees here. We've had dozens of people work here, but it didn't work out for them. And that's because they didn't have what it takes to become the number one custom shop in Georgia.
We both have very high standards, and Nate has very high standards because of what we do and what we produce and why we have the name we have in the community for the services that we do. You have to be damn near perfect, and we have a process that we follow to try and be as close to that as we can. And if we don't have somebody that's here that believes in that same type of core values and that same principle and the process, then it's not going to work out because I'm always going to be falling behind that person, or Nate's going to be falling behind that person, trying to help them get to that point. It's one thing if they're actively trying to better themselves, and that's what that can apply to anything. It can apply to any aspect of your life. If you're applying yourself, that means you're wanting to get better. You're wanting to change that. But if you just sit there and you complain that woe is me, or woe is me, woe is me, woe is me all the time, but you're not doing anything about it, well, you have to do something about it. And sometimes it's just taking that first step. But we saw that with some employees that just don't want to take that first step, don't want to take that initiative, don't want to do it. And they get it. That's fine that you could go somewhere else and do something else. But with us here at the shop, we try to do things by a certain standard. And, that's kind of what helped build our name. So that's what we like to perpetrate.
I would love to piggyback on a previous question, and then I got another one after this, more specific to mental health. But Nate and Ryan, if you could kind of, in summary, tell me, what do you all believe is the purpose of pain?
Purpose of pain for me is learning.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not just, it's knowledge. You gain knowledge, expertise. You know how to face new obstacles when they hit you in the future.
Yeah.
You have to go through trials and tribulations to become a successful person in life. And that is what life is all about. It's overcoming pain, because the reality is, and 90% of what happens to you in life, you have no control over, right? You have absolutely no control over, but you have control over how you act and how you react. And if you learn from your mistakes, pain, whatever it may be, then you're just going to become a better person, a stronger person. And I think a good example of that is, my sobriety too. 2 DUIs will cause a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Not just financially or legally, like at home. I have 3 sons. I had to explain that to. I want to be a good example for them. And, So having gone through that stuff, I feel like it's going to make me a better father. I'm going to be able to better guide them to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah. How does firearm safety relate to mental health responsibility? Because so often, right, we are on this crusade to get the firearm manufacturer specifically to make the investment, to wisen up, to be proactive about the realities facing the 2A community as a whole, whether they're younger, whether they're older, regardless of nationality, regardless of religion and identity, regardless of one's political stance. The manufacturing community as a whole needs to proactively reference and recognize the impacts of people simply not having a good day. And so I'm curious on your thoughts as it relates to, clearly you're great at satire, right? And creating or normalizing a lack of comfort with humor, but again, very specific to the mental wellness and then kind of appropriate firearm safety. How do you two kind of see the connection?
For me, looking at the community, because you see it in today's day and age, I mean, it's almost every time you get on your phone or you check the news, something's happened with a gun with somebody in some sort of bad way. Whether it be, a school shooting, whether it be a suicide, whether it be, drug abuse, whether it be gang related violence or something like that. And, there are proponents against the 2A community that say that they should take our guns away or whatever, because it's the gun's fault. I am a staunch supporter that it's not the gun's fault, it's the person behind the trigger. And a lot of times it deals with mental health issues behind that person, what happened with them, what's going on with them. And I agree with your stance, Jay. A lot of manufacturers, aren't as vocal as I think they should be. This is my personal opinion, that they're not as vocal as they should be when it comes to mental health, when it comes to their product, because it is a tool. Guns are tools, and they are tools that are made to kill things. So with gun ownership, it requires, a lot of responsibility. It shouldn't just be some fly by night. Oh, I went to the grocery store and I just picked one up, like a candy bar. It's not that. There's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of consequences that go into owning a firearm, and good and bad. But at the same time, when it comes to mental health, you know, there's a lot that I feel like people don't understand. And there's a lot that I feel like can be done to help people out, because it's the same way in a lot of ways to like the veteran community with like PTSD coming back from those experiences, or they have those experiences and then they don't have those outlets that they need to go to talk to somebody or speak with somebody or figure out the best way to handle a situation. And I feel like there's parallels there because, at the end of the day, if someone's just not having a bad day, whether it could be from any number of issues, it can lead to something bad if it's not handled in the right way, if there's not outlets put in place that actually help people. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it. I feel like it's definitely a mental health issue when it comes to a lot of these negative things with firearms, and I feel like there needs to be more outlets and more ways to deal with that in a constructive way.
Absolutely, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, mental health is a big issue in our country. And I think, like Ryan mentioned, not just school shootings or mass shootings or suicides, but even like things like road rage. Like there are people out there who have firearms who are not mentally fit and over a silly little road argument are willing to shoot people, right? So I think there's a disconnect, and there's people. I mean, yes, it is our fundamental right to be able to own a firearm, but there's a difference between your right and should you, right? And I think there's some people who don't recognize that. I'm not sure what there is we can do about that. It's a constantly debated topic about what to do with people and mental illness and the right to own firearms, right? They still kind of have the right to own firearms, but should they? It's a heavy topic. I can't say that I'm the best person to answer that question, but I definitely recognize it. It definitely rumbles in my head. I've seen people come into this store who definitely should not own a firearm. In fact, there's a local sheriff's deputy that I've known for years who was before he became a sheriff's deputy, he was a jailer, and they're required to do 2 years in the jail before they can do street patrol. And he seemed like a pretty cool guy until he got issued a squad car and was able to go on street patrol. And then he came in one day, and listen, many of my friends are law enforcement, former military. All right, so I'm not knocking law enforcement, but he came in and real kind of cocky, like when he got his full uniform and his badge and his gun on his hip and his own squad car, and he seemed like a completely different person. And he was talking about his first arrest that he had just made last week. And his first arrest was at a house party where there were a bunch of underage kids drinking. And he was priding himself on having knocked the kid out because he tried to run, right? And he knocked him out by tackling him, and he knocked him out cold. And it says he's talking about a 16-year-old kid that he knocked out. There's just certain things in life that if you have a certain mental outlook on things, or you are mentally ill, you just shouldn't do, right? And owning a firearm or becoming a police officer, well, whatever it is. But I just what I saw in him that day was this immense pride in knocking out a 16-year-old kid. And this is no small dude. He's easily 6'4", about 280 pounds, big guy, right? And he knocked out a little 16-year-old kid, and he was so proud of it. And I lost a lot of respect for him that day when he told me that story. I think there's something wrong up here, right? There's something wrong up here. If that's how you're thinking, there's something wrong up here, and there's something not right with you. We see that all the time, and it's not just that particular example.
Well, we've had guys that have come in before, and we and me have talked about this, where if a guy comes in and we have a feeling about it, we don't have to sell you a firearm. If you're coming in here to buy one of the guns off the wall and you're wanting to fill out the paperwork and do all that stuff, you could have the money for it. It is your right to own that thing. But I or Nate, we don't have to sell it to you. And we've had people that have come in here that have given that kind of aura and vibe to us, where we're like, okay, you said certain things and you're acting a certain way, and for me at least, yeah, me and Nate's the business owner. We want to make money, we want to sell the guns. That's the whole point of having a business. But I still have a conscience, and so does Nate. So if that guy comes in and he's saying, yeah, I just went through a messy divorce and my kids got taken from me, and I just lost my house and my car and all this stuff, and I'm not really feeling too good now. Oh, hey, can I buy that gun? A lot of red flags. And I feel like a lot of stores and manufacturers should probably, do a little bit more about, I guess, in a way, vetting people when they walk in. And it's not meant to be something super serious, but use common sense, use common knowledge. If the dude looks like he might be a little, off about it, you don't have to sell him that firearm. I get it. You want to make money. Manufacturers want to make money. We want to make money. At the end of the day, if we sell that person a gun, he walks outside and does something, terrible with it, I feel like that's on me. So,
yeah, and
Yeah.
all too often we see people in the comments on our channel when we make videos like that where we've denied service to someone because of something sketchy they've said. There's people in the comments like, you guys are bootlickers.
yeah,
You guys are anti 2A. Like if it was me, I would have sold the man his gun because it was his right to own it. And I think there's a lot of people like that in the firearms industry who are so pro 2A. They're more pro 2A than everybody else, and they just got to show it off and got to tell it to everybody in the room. Let everybody know that they're more pro 2A than you. Those guys to me are dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. They give us a bad name. As somebody who used to own a gun importer, it's kind of funny. Like one time, I think it was Chris Kalloy from Ruger was on Capitol Hill, and he brought up Walk the Talk America, saying we support Walk the Talk America. And at one point, I think AOC asked Chris, like, would you abolish the ATF if you could? As if Chris is like a wizard or something, right?
just
Like it's a stupid question, but Chris said, hey, we have a good working relationship with our ATF agents. And he left it at that, right? And it's the same thing that I would say when I owned a place in Jersey. I got along with my ATF agents, but it's not the hill you die on, right? But I remember like this guy comes, because I reposted the video, and he called Chris a bootlicker. And I'm like, hey man, like, do you own a gun shop or anything like that? And he's like, no. Okay, now he's Mr. 2A though, right? And he's like, he had an opportunity to da 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 da. And I'm like, he's also in charge of 100 employees who's got to feed. And like, maybe it's not a good idea to say like, I'm going to go to war and fight with the government. Like, maybe that's not how we win. Because I'm sure that guy ain't helping Chris out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I mean. It's like, sometimes I feel like we have these representatives that come forward that just really make us look bad. And those are the guys, of course, that people like use as an example, that are unreasonable and not realizing like, yeah, everybody does have a right, but maybe not that day is the best day for them to exercise that right. If they're feeling off, hey, maybe you tell them like, today's not a good day, brother. Like, here's where I want you to go get some help, right? Like, here's a card from Walk Talk America. Take a free and anonymous mental health. I'm not really confident. I need you to be alive, right? Like, every negative outcome of the firearm will get used against us. And when I say us, it's the 2A community, right? Whether it's suicide or mass shooting. We just had one at a gym here in Vegas, right? Like, that's, yeah, it's a negative check. So just to say like, to be pro 2A, you can't be compassionate and look out for a customer. That's what the 2A is all about. It's about protecting and saving people. It's you know what I mean? Like, no, you don't just hand guns to people that are in crisis, or you may think are in crisis. And you're not saying you're never not going to sell that guy a gun. It's just not today.
Exactly.
Today doesn't feel right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And people don't understand that. I feel like in the comments, like you said, I would rather him come back when he's good. Hey, I went and talked to somebody about it. I feel much better now. In the situation with him personally, or him, her, whoever it is personally resolved, then fine. Okay, cool. You want to come shoot with us at our range day? Come on, let's go. You feel better. But there's certain times and places for it. And yes, it's your right. It's my right to own it. I get it. I understand that. But be in the right headspace, especially so if you're shooting and everything, be in the right headspace when you're shooting. Don't go to a gun range and you're pissed off because you just, lost $50,000 on a stupid bet, and go to the gun range and just, take out your frustration. That's not where it needs to be. And I feel like there's so many people that don't dive deep into the actual causes of the issue or what happened. Everyone loves to see the headlines, and that's what they put on it.
And that's exactly because there are some people out there who are so blinded by their own super 2A-ness that they can't actually sit there and think, really reasonably think. Like I mentioned earlier, we see it in the comments all the time, especially on that video that we have 30 million views on. If you go through the comments, you'll see who we're talking about. Those guys are in there in droves. They're like, we should all stop following the rules of the ATF, and then they can't do anything about it. Right? Or like, okay,
or no, they yell at you because you're like, hey, you're a gun store. You should just say F the ATF. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
have a store.
Exactly. They'll take the store away from us,
Yeah.
They'll take our rights away from us. Why? So that we can do something to appease you. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'm not going to give up my rights, because you want to see your rights get better. I'm not going to do something stupid just so that you can say, well, this guy's on my side. I don't care if you're on my side or not. The reality is, I know I'm a pro 2A person, and I don't need your validation to tell me so. And I know what we do here is, we have to abide by the rules in order to be able to serve our fellow 2A people. Otherwise, we lose the license and we can't do it anymore. And that's one less gun shop. And during Biden's administration, they shut down tons of gun stores for minor infractions that they normally otherwise would not have. One little tiny mistake, and they shut down the store. So, what they were doing was they were trying to close down all the little mom and pop stores, right? They didn't want, like here in our local county, we probably have at least 24 gun stores,
small and large,
from small to large, right? But if they come in here and they want to find a little infraction here and there, or, a T isn't dotted here and an I isn't, or a T isn't slashed here and an I isn't dotted here, then we'll shut you down.
Oh, revocation, you're gone.
Revoke our license. And, slowly but surely, now what they're doing is they're making it difficult for us to exercise our right and go buy guns, right? Go to the shooting range and practice shooting. That was their plan the whole time. That was their plan the whole time. We're not going to do anything to jeopardize what we have going right now for us, And I
And
think there's
most
a
people
lot of,
don't know what the hell they're talking about half the
yeah,
time.
exactly. They're on the internet, sitting in their underwear, eating Cheetos in mom's basement, commenting
And
on
they
the
think
internet.
they're on a game show called How Pro 2A Are You?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Or
almost
they
like
get it.
their voice even changes. They're like, "Oh, I'm so tactical, bro." Like they're just so tough and so pro 2A, like you could never compare to them. Yeah, I could talk about
Well,
those fools all day long.
I've got a good question in regard to that, because the data says overwhelmingly that men struggle with mental wellness in a capacity that then leads them to unaliving themselves with firearms more so than women. And to that point, and I'm sure I'm running the risk of getting pulled over by that gentleman that you mentioned, but the deputy that you had made reference to, if ever I'm in North Georgia, don't look, my name isn't, I don't even really look, I identify as a middle-aged white woman, sir. I would run the risk to say maybe he was bullied as a kid, right? And maybe now that he's an adult and in a position of power, he hasn't really done the deep dive that you mentioned, Nate. And so my question to you is, as I think about how many men that I know that are silently dealing with hidden pain that they mask, however, what would you say, and same for you, Ryan, with regard to the question, what are some of the either myths or the misunderstandings about masculinity that as you've matured, you've had to unlearn?
Well, keeping secrets is one.
Mm.
Keeping secrets is definitely one. I think a lot of us men in today's day and age, we have there is a standard that we have to meet, as far as like how much of a man you are. Right. And being a man is the like never complaining or talking about what's bothering you, and keeping secrets, keeping things to yourself. Well, really what that does is it just festers inside you. You still have to deal with it, but you're just dealing with it by yourself, and eventually it's a ticking time bomb. I think for me personally, in my more recent years, I've learned to kind of be honest with myself first, and not deny myself any help if I need it. And, I've been to therapists before, and, obviously I'm in rehab right now. It's one of the biggest things I learned in rehab. I was so afraid, you know, if it was the first day of rehab and I was on this talk show with you guys, I would have never admitted my 2 DUIs so openly. But what I realized in that room the first day of rehab was that I wasn't the only one with secrets. We went around the room and everybody shared their story. And I was in there with a 21-year-old kid who had smoked a joint several days before he was in a car accident with his friend, where they were joshing around and trying to drift and stuff, and he lost control of the vehicle, hit a fence, and a fence pole came through the passenger window and killed his best friend.
Oh my God.
And they did a blood test on him, and they saw that there was marijuana in his system, and they charged him with a DUI. He wasn't actually high that day, but he had marijuana in his system, so they charged him with a DUI. Right. And he's been sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. And he's no longer in rehab. He's in prison right now. And, that young man, made a bad decision, I guess, one day to smoke marijuana, but he was joshing around in the car and made a mistake. Right. And so he told this story, and I was just like, damn, like that could have happened to me. That could, like back in my younger years, we were out in the, church parking lot doing donuts and, doing stupid stuff. Right. Luckily, nobody got hurt, but it happens. It can happen. And, now this young man's life is, completely ruined. And as you go around the room, you start hearing all these different stories of, child molestation and, physical abuse and mental abuse. And you realize that all these people in the room are all good people, and they just ended up here because of a bad decision, you know and it's because they weren't in good mental state when they did whatever it is that they did. You know, they're all good people. It's just, you know, sometimes we make mistakes, we end up there. But as I went around the room, I realized that I was going to have to be honest when it came time to tell my story. And the amount of weight that was lifted off of my shoulders by telling the truth and not keeping a secret was immense. I think it contributed a lot to my sobriety. And so, you know, when you ask the question, I think that honesty with yourself and not keeping secrets, you know, those are things that men need to start and stop doing. You know, we need to stop lying to ourselves and start opening up to people, because it is not masculine to be honest about your feelings and what's going on in your head. You know, I think it makes you a stronger person to be able to admit that. And I think a real man knows his strengths and weaknesses and seeks help where he has weakness, you know.
Yeah, Ryan, remember when I said that this was going to be a light show and it was going to be heavy?
Yeah,
I completely lied.
that's fine.
No, but I think these conversations are so important, especially when it's coming from gun people. Because like I think like by nature we tend to be like protectors and don't want to show weakness or vulnerability. It just comes second nature, right? Like I have so many friends that work in behavioral health, and it's so amazing. Like when I remember one time like being out in the street and just out and about with some people from Mental Health America, and a fight broke out, and they all ran behind me, right? And they were like, well, we know the gun guy could take care of himself. And I was like, I'm not even armed right now. Like we're all running if shit gets really, you know what I mean? Like, but it's just like that expectation level that everyone bestows on a gun person is that you are tough, you can handle any situation. And I think a lot of people, you know, get to a point where they snap because, you know, they haven't dealt with something, or they're like, I can't deal with someone, I'm the tough guy of the group here of friends. You know,
Well,
everybody needs an outlet.
I feel like they do. The biggest one of my biggest things, and it's one of the stories that I keep with myself, is like, you know, growing up and seeing just, you know, men in my life kind of carry along the same example of like, you know, they are the tough guy. They have to be the tough guy. You know, they have to, you know, do whatever they have to do, and that's what they have to do. That's their job. It kind of bled down to me because especially even when I was younger, going through high school, and then once I joined the army and I went to basic training and stuff like that and came out, especially in the military. And I'll say this just from a military standpoint, this same issue of mental health is a big, 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 big topic for guys in the military because they have that complex. They have the complex, and I hate to say it in this kind of a way because I love their armed forces and I love our service members and I love the guys that I served with. But a lot of the guys, especially, you know, take on that mantle of they have to be strong all the time. All the time. You can't be weak when it comes to a lot of things. And it's kind of perpetuated with people in leadership and in the service too, which is not a good thing because when it's reinforced from higher, you feel like you have to do it. So if you feel like you have to do it and you're trained like that, and someone does 20 years in the service and they come out and they're harboring all this stuff inside them and they don't know how to express it as an outlet because they were never taught how to, or they never had that outlet, it leads to something worse.
And I think that being weak is a misnomer, you know,
Yeah.
like it is not weak for you to admit that, you know, there's something you can't handle. I mean, I think that's what a real man does, is he admits when he needs help. And, you know, I think that's a huge misconception, you know, weakness being considered
Asking for help
asking for help. It's wrong. It's not true.
Well, it took a lot of time for me just because I had to go to, I mean, to be completely honest with myself, I had to go to counseling and therapy for it just because when I was younger, it translated with me not having outlet, it translated into anger. And I would get upset very easily, and I wouldn't have my patience. I wouldn't have patience with people. And I saw how it affected people just around me in general, and it wasn't a good outlet for me. And there was times where it was at a real low point for me where I actually got hurt during a training mission, and it came down from my cadre. When I got hurt, I was like, hey, I went to the hospital because I went to the hospital the day after I got injured. and I literally torn my abdomen, and I was going to have to be on, profile duty. There's this stigma with being hurt. Well, you should be strong. Okay. Well, you're all right. You'll be fine. You tough through it, pick yourself up, get back in there, that does more damage to like a person's psyche, especially a dude, especially a guy. If they're in that environment where everyone's got to be strong, everyone's got to be the tough guy, you got to be able to carry yourself and protect others and stuff. If you're injured and everyone's around you saying, "Oh, you're not injured, suck it up, get back in there," I get it to a point. Yeah, you want to have some resiliency to you, but if you're legitimately hurt and injured, and someone's telling you that you're not, that damages someone when they're like, okay, well then I shouldn't need to go get help. I don't need to go get help. If I go get help, they're going to think even worse of me. And that slowly going down the road just hurts more and more and more. And then it just reinforces that negativeness when it comes to that situation. And that happened with me. And, it took a while to get back to a state where I was in a good place, because it got to a point where it got really dark. And, like Jay was talking about, guys, when it gets to that point, they don't have that outlet. They will, do something that you can't take back. And I've seen that with guys. So for me, talking was an outlet. I had to talk to somebody. I had to, and it's really hard to take that step. It is. It's very. And I laugh about it now, but it's just it took a while to make that step. But once you talk to somebody, it just opens it up. Like Nate was saying, it's a weight. That weight is a legitimate thing. It lifts it off your shoulders, and you actually can speak to someone again.
I love that.
Yeah. No, it's I totally agree. And sometimes that person you need to talk to is best to talk to somebody that doesn't know you at all. Right. Like because like, here's the thing, like Jay and I know each other, Kevin and I know each other. Like they both know when I'm bullshitting myself or whatever, but a stranger like maybe can give it a set of eyes like that no one has, or, all your friends kind of know you too well. And then sometimes just like humor and all these things get in the way. Sometimes it's good to go talk. I want the listeners to understand sometimes it's good to go talk to a complete stranger that has no judgment on you whatsoever and is just learning and taking in, right? And you haven't had experiences with them, and you can kind of just be honest. Sometimes it's easier to be honest to a complete stranger than it is to, somebody that loves you, or you don't want to disappoint them. So no, I'm really glad you guys are saying that. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think people need to see guys like you, especially that have a good time with it and make these great videos and own a gun shop, like talking about these things, because the perception is that we don't talk about these things and we just want to arm people, and we don't really care about humanity and human life. And I think like the more we get out there and show, we don't only have gun people that watch this show. We do have therapists because of the therapist element to it. When Jake came on board, and I think it helps to see us all in a different light. We're not this monolithic group that has this attitude, of we just want to arm people and Second Amendment, pride from
I don't know
hands.
about you guys, but like I don't carry around a gun hoping that I get to shoot somebody.
Yeah, that's not my mentality either.
I hope I never ever have to present my firearm in a self-defense situation. I hope that never happens. But if in the event that it does, right, I think a lot of us are also not prepared for what comes next.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people out there carrying guns who don't know how to do CPR or put a tourniquet on or anything like that. I've always told my friends and my family, like, I don't want to shoot anybody. But if somebody comes into my house, I'm going to protect my house and my family. And if I've disarmed that person, I'm not going to try to kill them. Right. Like I would rather be able to shoot somebody, disarm them, and then save their life afterwards. I don't want to live with having killed someone, right? Having taken a life. I think that's a very serious thing. I think a lot of gun people who walk around with their guns, who are so gung-ho about their guns, don't realize the depth of taking a life either. There's really a lot to it. I've never done it. I never served in the military, but I know guys who have, and I've heard some of the stories. And even as a civilian, hearing a military man tell you a story about his overseas experience and having to shoot someone he didn't want to shoot, but he had to in order to save his or somebody else's life, you know, that's a burden that they carry for the rest of their lives. You know, I don't think a lot of people realize the depth of that. I have really only realized it once I started hearing stories from my friends coming back from overseas. You know, owning a gun throughout my younger years, and but when we were in our mid to late 30s and they were coming back and they were telling me all these stories, is when it really kind of resonated with me. Like, I don't think I ever want to kill somebody, you know, because I see the pain that they go through every single day. They have PTSD, they can't sleep, they have depression, you know, like the dreams that they have. There's a lot to taking a life. It's not just being pro 2A, you know, you kind of have to consider all those things. You know, one of my favorite people in the gun industry is John Correa. Y'all know who he is?
Yep.
Okay, John Correa. I love this guy, right? He talks about having mental fitness, spiritual fitness, and firearms fitness all the time. He's like, and you got to have all of those together. You know, you got to have all of those. You know, you never know when you leave the house that day if it's going to be your last day. You know, so having that spiritual fitness and being right with yourself, right with God, you know, being right with your family, you know, those are also important aspects of gun ownership that people ignore.
Right.
I think those are super important things. That's why I love that guy, man, because I think he is a great teacher. He's not just a great firearms instructor. He is, you know, he's a preacher, you know, he's a man of God. He's a family man. There's a lot that goes into the responsibility of being a gun owner.
Yeah. Yeah. Guns and mental health are not mutually exclusive. They go together,
Yeah.
right? So you could train. I mean, we could train. We all love to train. We all love to talk about how we train, but we also need to be right up here, right? And as a gun owner, when you buy a gun, right away, you should be like, all right, I need my training program. I need where I'm staging these things, how I'm going to be responsible with it. And also to the mental aspect of it, I need to think of. I need to think about like what the plan is for one day. If I start showing signs of dementia, I need to talk to my wife or my husband and say, look, when this starts to happen, we have to have a plan in place, right? And that's just part of being prepared, right? Like we pride ourselves on prepping, being prepared, being ready, defending. You know, so why not have that part taken care of and have your soul right? You know, you talk about the spirituality and whatever it is that keeps you good, right? Like tend to that stuff. You know, and I love it. Like once again, going back to we as gun people got to start saying this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need the mental health world telling us that we need to be like this. We got to start thinking about it ourselves.
100%.
Well,
But
taking ownership of the issue, right?
yeah, 100%. I mean, who's better to do it than us, right? Because every time we let other outside forces try to do it, there's always the but, and the but that we can't deal with, right? Like red flag laws, restriction. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we have to be like, look, we're good. This is what we do already. I mean, that's part of like the walk the talk America world, you know. But I think we're the best equipped for it because if I'm a gun guy and I go in and I buy a gun from you guys, I'm going to listen to you guys. I'm going to listen to everything you say. You know what I mean? Like I'm trusting you. You're selling me a tool that you know requires responsibility and there's so much that goes with it. I'm also going to trust you guys when you're like, look, you got to be good up here too, man. Like, you know what I mean? If you ever have an issue, come back and talk to us. Right? Like we're not going to tell you, no, your gun rights need to be restricted now and you need to be on a list. And, you know, you're going to give them the best advice, you know, as 2A people. I think we got to look within and, you know, ourselves as a culture to handle these things. But so what do you guys got going on in the future? This is kind of a loaded question, Ryan. Like, what do you guys got going in the future for mental health?
Well, as far as one thing, I mean, just a a humble plug for what we're doing with you guys.
Right. That's where I was going with it because I'm super appreciative of it. You know, and I think it's awesome that I fumbled that transition probably, but what the hell?
You tried it though. You shot your shot though, Mike.
No, man, it's totally cool. I think this was also kind of, I attribute this to just kind of, the divine in a sense, or just fate maybe, because I think Jay had sent me an email about it a while ago, and me and Nate had been going back and forth because Nate is an avid motorcycle rider. Even with the accident, he loves motorcycles, he loves riding them, and I love it too. I'm actually going to try to get my my motorcycle license, I promise.
Hey, get that endorsement. I see you. I see you, Ryan.
Yeah. So we love it. And we've now been doing, this will be our 4th year doing a motorcycle ride. In the past 3 years, we've done some really cool things with one charity for 2 years, Motorcycle Missions, that did stuff with veterans and PTSD and people in the service industry that come back that might not be, that might need some mental health and stuff like that. And they work on motorcycles. They get them into the trades and stuff like that. And then last year we did one for a memorial ride for a family that actually came to the shop here to get some work done. And it was for a husband and a wife that had 3 sons that lost their youngest son to a hit and run accident, very similar to what Nate's accident was. And it really resonated with us. And the family was super appreciative and sweet of what we had done for him here at the shop. And it really weighed on mine and Nate's hearts. And we were like, let's do the ride this year in honor of her son that was taken from her. And we were able to raise money for his headstone and everything. And it was an amazing event. And it was fun. And we got to it this year, and we were like, we're going to be doing another motorcycle ride. But we need to try and find somebody that we can reach out to, or, someone that we feel like we could support that's going to be supporting a good cause and a good mission. And that's when Jay emailed me a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was. And I was like, I didn't even think I walked into Nate's office and I was like, I just had an idea. And that's when I got back on the phone with Jay. So what we're going to do is the 31st of May. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we're going to be doing our motorcycle ride here at the shop. We're going to be heading up to even North Georgia to go and fellowship with some people and drive out and then ride back. And we're going to end it back here in the county. And we're going to be doing it where half of all the proceeds that we make from that day, whether it be donations or raffle tickets for any of the stuff we're doing, half of it going to you guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. I mean, it's nice to get the support. Walk Talk America, and the listeners have heard me say this. We don't get any government money. We don't get any outside money. Like, we're alive because of the gun industry. And I've always appreciated the fact that there's a lot of veterans, right? Like, there's a lot of veteran organizations that move in the 2A space, but we're a 2A, like, we're just every gun owner. So our Venn diagram has first responders, the weekend warrior, the staunch 2A guy, and the active duty military and combat vet. But like, it's a place where if you're pro 2A and you love the Second Amendment, you finally have a place where you can go and be like, I can back a mental health organization that aligns with my 2A beliefs, like 100%. That doesn't believe in red flag laws, that doesn't believe in restriction of people's rights, that does, because most of the time, if you wanted to back a mental health organization, they are like you until they're not, right? Like, we are okay with guns, but right. And it's like, this is ours and it's homegrown. So I really appreciate you guys' support on that. Especially since it happened kind of like a miracle, like we talked about earlier, right? Like Jay walking into your life, off of a phone call and being like, we have this thing coming right up. So I just want to thank you guys for that. I think it's going to be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wish I could be there. Next year
pleasure.
I'll be there. I'll bring a bike next year.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
sir.
We'll hold you to it.
That'd be awesome.
You can ride a bike. I would. I'm learning all kinds of things about you, Jay.
Yeah, it's something that I love to ride, and I see a lot of local motorcycle groups and riding clubs. They're constantly doing charities, right? And what gun store does a motorcycle ride?
Exactly.
None. Just us. And we love being unique in that way. We want to do things. Look, we support our law enforcement. We love our military. We want to give back. We're not just here to turn a profit. We're here because we want to be here. We enjoy what we do. And, I think part of being a good person is just giving back. And that's why we do the ride. I mean, the ride is obviously
make us hardly anything. It literally just covers the cost of just having people here and giving them food.
Yeah, and just hosting
Right.
it. But we do it with a purpose in mind. Like last year, that young fallen rider, man, it absolutely touched my heart when his mother came in here and she could not keep her composure, talking about her son and what had happened to him. And, they could not afford the headstone that they wanted to get for him. And I knew immediately then and there that we were going to take it upon ourselves to do something about that, and we got it. And so, like, I think it's kind of a selfish thing too, like, we want to feel good about helping people. And, it makes me feel better at the end of the day, knowing that we did something good with our ride and we're not just stuffing money in our pockets. That's not what that's about. It's about helping somebody else. One of the, outcomes of that is it makes us feel better. And, that goes in and plays with the mental health thing. Like, even in AA and in rehab, they talk about how service to others is a part of your recovery. And I firmly believe in that. And that's why we do the ride. We do the ride because service to others is an important thing. We have our law enforcement, they go through hell every day to keep us safe. So does our military, first responders, so we like to give back to them. And that's why we did our charity ride with Motorcycle Missions. They took first responders, veterans, former law enforcement, those suffering from PTSD, and they helped them get into a new career in the motorcycle world. And I thought that was really cool. It's a kind of a dope thing, and it's unique in itself, helping people get into motorcycles, whether it be mechanicking, sales, design, instruction, you name it. They take all these people from a completely different world and bring them to the motorcycling world, and it helps their mental health. And I know for a fact that when I get on my bike and I ride out towards the mountains, that's like therapy for me, man. It's a way to clear my head. The wind in your face, the freedom of riding. You're kind of unprotected, right? You're unprotected. You're at the mercy of your own skill and the other people around you. And every time you get back home from a safe ride, it's like, thank you, God, thank you, God. And that was amazing. I've never had a bad ride, it's always therapy inducing. So, for us to do that, it's a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that. And because we're up against it, I want to ask you one last question. You kind of just answered it, but I think there's probably more to it. And this is for both of you, right? How do you tend to your mental health these days?
Me, it's all about connections. Like me and Nate, he's my boss when we're here, and I'm his manager. We run the store, we run it the way how we're supposed to. My biggest thing that helps me with my mental health is being able to disconnect. So whenever we leave, me and Nate, we kind of have this thing, and it's kind of weird. I love you, but not in like a weird way. But we don't ever leave the shop if we're angry at each other. Like, we could have a disagreement about doing a certain business dealing or whatever, or like a customer came in and I wanted to deal with it a different way, whatever it is. We leave on good terms. That way, whenever we walk out the door, like, hey, you want to go golf? Hey, you want to go down and go catch a movie? You want to go do something? You want to go come to my house, have a barbecue, whatever? You've got to be able to disconnect, because yeah, this is important, but at the same time, he's my friend. So being able to disconnect from the shop and then go home, and then also have that connection with my wife too. When I'm with her, I'm present. It's just being present and being able to disconnect from things when you need to. That's helped me out tremendously. And that's why I try to keep that outlook on life when it comes to a lot of things. And I feel like it helps me out personally. It helps me out here at the shop. It helps me out with my family at my house. So I feel like that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for me, I love riding, but there's other things outside of here that I love to do. I want to spend time with my kids, mentor them. It's such a great feeling to see my kids come. But all of the three of my kids, two of them are like straight A students, and I've got one son. He comes home and he's got 100 on his test every single time. 100. I'm like, God, I don't even know how that's possible. Like, how are you so much? Yeah, how is he so much smarter than me? He must be getting that from my wife. But the other thing is, when we are here, we're having a good time. This is a job that we chose to do because we have a passion for it. So it's not work. It can sometimes get stressful when we have deadlines and, things have to be done. Like today, I got to crunch and get this paint job done. But honestly, like when we make the shorts on Tuesdays are normally our film days. So we film all of the shorts that we're going to play throughout the week in one day. we laugh our balls off.
I was going to say, I can only imagine
Yeah.
the laughing.
And nothing here is scripted. Like,
No,
I'm like, hey, you remember that guy that came in and pointed the gun at my belly and
Yeah,
said
let's do a
that
short about
and
that.
then said that the gun wasn't loaded, and when I grabbed it, I dropped the mag and it was full,
loaded.
and then I
Loaded.
rounded it and a round came out. Let's do a short about that guy, right? And so all of our script is impromptu, like it's completely off the cuff, and sometimes we surprise each other with what comes out of our mouth.
Yeah, and it's very hard,
and
to
it
keep the
is
camera
so
still.
hard to not laugh on camera, but we have a blast doing that. And that, for me, like when we started doing these shorts, it was kind of a therapeutic thing.
It was.
No lie.
It felt
At
so
the
nice.
end of 2023, it was a rough year. It was a rough year financially. It was a rough year for guns in general. And I had just had this customer that had rubbed me the wrong way. And it literally made me feel like people don't appreciate what we do here. And I spent my entire life savings on building this business to serve other people, and they don't appreciate what we do. And I kind of like had given up. I'm like, fuck this. I'm done. And then I thought, I had this friend, he texted me and he sent me a video of another gun store doing similar skits. D-Boss Firearms, they're out of Wisconsin, and they make very similar content to what we do. And they made a skit about something that immediately made me think about the last transaction I had with this customer that went so awry. And so I decided, you know what, we're going to make a short. And Ryan and I did it, and it's what caused our YouTube channel to explode. In 1 month, we went from 600 subscribers, which took us almost 4 years to get, to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month. The next month we were at 25,000. The next month we're at 50,000. And it was like, wait a minute, maybe we got something here. Maybe we have a formula here.
So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. And it's all of our shorts are based off of real customer interactions that have happened here at the shop. We don't script nothing. It's all based off of stuff that's actually happened here. There's literally one short that we made that we kind of made up, but it was last year when the ATFs asked for a recall on all the 473s because they wanted to send us a new version that included non-binary under the gender. And so we made a short where Ryan came in and he couldn't decide. He checked all three boxes.
Yeah, I couldn't decide.
Male, female, and non-binary. And he couldn't decide whether he was a male or a female. And as the camera kept panning back to him,
I just kept changing.
He kept changing from a male to a female. And but I'm sure that's happened somewhere. But yeah, it is.
When we do it, it's funny because we're laughing the entire time because we take a bad situation, maybe it was a shitty customer interaction, but we take it, flip it, and then we have fun, and now we're laughing about it. So yeah, it probably was a crappy interaction, but guess what? We're laughing about it. Now we feel better about it, and guess what? Now we're going to post it on YouTube so everybody else can laugh about it too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why don't you give everybody like the YouTube channel? We're going to post all these links, but how do people get a hold of you? Where do they find you on social media? I mean, I know I follow your Instagram. How do people get a hold of you? Where is the shop? Like, tell everybody. Just
two biggest ones we're on right now is, of course, YouTube. So if you type on YouTube, just type in the King of Camo, you see our skull with the crown on it and everything. Instagram is a little different. It's king.of.camo, and that's like our portfolio. We kind of show off everybody's builds. Like, when customers come in, they're paying all this money to get something done. We're proud of what we do. So if you ever have an idea or you want to get ideas or get some inspiration, Nate posts all the finished builds on Instagram, so you can see all the cool paint jobs, and we post some of our shorts there too. But we're on Facebook, just same thing, the King of Camo. Yep, there it is right there. Woo! And we try our best to post on everything. So we do have an X page. We try to post on that. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
We're on Rumble. We're on Truth Social. Yep. We're on all the major platforms. And really, I mean, the easiest way to find us is just type the King of Camo and you'll find us. Here in North Georgia, we're located in Cumming, Georgia, spelled just like you think. And we're in the North Georgia area, about 45 minutes south of Atlanta, north of Atlanta. That's right. Yeah, there's that brain injury right there. Yeah, so we 3040 Keithbridge Road, Cumming, Georgia. hit us up. We also have a website, www.thekingofcamo.com. You can submit inquiries there. You can see all of our latest events that we're hosting or attending. You can sign up for email updates as to what we're doing and what we got going on. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And we hope that you guys follow us on YouTube, because we have big plans to grow the channel and do a lot more fun stuff. You know, I've always told Ryan, since we started the YouTube channel, that we're a shop that has a YouTube channel. I want to be a YouTube channel that has a shop, you know, because the truth is, like, it's a lot of a grind to paint 5 and 6 guns every single day, all day. And we're just grinding and grinding and grinding, trying to make ends meet, painting guns that way. And now that the YouTube channel is doing so well, I would like to see that transition where we make our money off of brand deals and YouTube and our content that we create, rather than having to grind. And then we can really spend time on making special things and doing cool projects. And so that's kind of the end goal, is to kind of close the shop to the general public and be by appointment only, so that we can be very selective about what we do, so that we can make really awesome content. That's kind of what we are striving for. By subscribing to our channel, it helps us out tremendously. By watching our videos from start to finish helps us tremendously. And we really put a lot of effort into it. A lot of people don't realize that we work a full-time job here at the shop serving our customers, but we also work another full-time job at YouTube. You know, all the filming, editing, coming up with the ideas for the paint jobs that we film and edit. It is a whole nother full-time job.
And it's just me and Nate doing it.
So. Yeah. And so it's, you know, it's a lot of work on both of us. You know, God bless our wives for putting up with our lack of appearance at home on time every night, you know, but they also know what we're doing here. We're trying to build something. Fortunately, we're having a great time doing it. And you know, we've got a lot of great support, not just from our fans and subscribers, but both of our families are highly supportive of what we're doing here, and the 2A community as well. You know, when we go to gun shows, it doesn't take but 5 minutes to walk in the door and have somebody recognize us and walk up to us and be like, "Hey, I watch you guys on YouTube."
The best thing is when someone quotes a short to us. That makes me happy every single time.
Yeah,
if someone can quote a short to me,
it's always a really
day.
good feeling. And one of the things I always told Ryan was that, you know, like, we always got to remain humble. You know, remember where you came from, and always remain humble. I don't plan on turning into a Brandon Herrera, you know. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I've just heard through the grapevine he's a dickin' person. So, you know, I don't want to be like that. You know, we want to be cool with all.
He's our next guest. Damn, Nate.
He's coming on next.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be hearing from his people. Well, it's funny because we've just been assigned a YouTube rep who is in charge of all the gun channels, so he knows every single gun tuber. And we've been trying to get Donut Operator to send us a gun so that I could custom paint it like a donut. And
I've done that before, like 3 times.
And so we've been making some connections with some bigger YouTubers, and it's been cool, you know, to do some cross collaborations. We even painted a gun for Tim Kennedy. Magnum Research was building a revolver for him, and he wanted it to match his 4570 lever gun. Well, they were building this revolver in 4570, and so we did a color match to match his rifle. So it's like, you know, this is an honor for us. You know, people like Tim Kennedy, we get to do stuff for people like Tim Kennedy. Holy cow. What a blessing. Yeah. But we need to remain humble. You know, we need to remember where we came from. We can't act like big YouTubers and like we're cooler than everybody else. No, like we are human just like everyone else. And, you know, we should treat people the right way. And so it's so humbling. And when we go places, and like when we went to the gathering and that little kid there was this little kid, he ran up to me and he was like, "Oh my God, you're the king of camo. I watch your videos on YouTube all the time." He's like, "You are amazing." And I was like, wow, this little kid. And then his dad came over, and his dad was like, "This kid loves y'all, man. Like he's constantly bringing his phone over to me, like to show me your videos and stuff. And he loves your work." It was just super humbling.
It reminds us that we're doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good feeling, man. It really is. And it's never something that I imagined would happen when I started this business in my garage 7.5 years ago. I never imagined that some kid would be running up to me at a gun event wanting our autograph and a picture together. So it's super cool, man. I feel super blessed and very, very lucky to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that. And you certainly have fans here at Walk the Talk America. Ryan, Nate, thank you for jumping on. When we first started, Ryan said he's got a job. So I appreciate you like walking away from that job. And I know you got to get back to it. So thank you though for coming on because this has been fun.
Well,
This was a great
absolutely. And
show.
and this was important to do for us too. We love making relationships with people in the 2A community, and we're also going to be contributing with our ride. So it was important for me as well to show face.
Absolutely.
I appreciate
Mike,
that.
can I do the
So
outro? Oh, go ahead.
yes, absolutely. Do the outro. I'd love that.
No, okay. I didn't know what you was gonna say. Were you about to close us out?
I was about to close this out. So
Okay.
do the outro.
All right, I'm doing the outro here at Nate and Ryan. It's a new one. I just wrote it yesterday. That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Guns and Mental Health, where iron sharpens iron and tough conversations save lives. Big thanks to our guest from the King of Camo. Proof that you can carry strength, grit, and compassion in the same holster. Please remember to check in, and checking in is strength. Silence is not safety, and you don't have to choose between your rights and your wellness. You can protect both. If you or someone you know is struggling, visit walkthetalkamerica.org for free and anonymous mental health screening. No red tape, no judgment, just a place to start. And until next time, on behalf of Kevin Berry, Michael Sedini, and myself, lock up your firearms, but never your feelings. Be safe, be seen, and walk the talk.
Thanks for having us,
Love
guys.
that.
God bless.
Yeah. Thank you.